prairie wind didn't howl that night. It screamed. Screamed like something was being torn loose from the earth itself. Thunder rolled across the Kansas plains in great snarling waves, and rain fell sideways in sheets, hammering the roof of Elias Crow's cabin like angry fists. Elias sat near the hearth, his rifle across his lap and a cup of black coffee growing cold on the table beside him. He had lived through storms, both of the land and of men, but something about this one made his skin itch. The kind of storm where you don't just lock your door, you pray behind it. Then he heard it, a different sound. Not wind, not rain, a cry, short, ragged, almost too faint to notice under the chaos. Elias stood up fast. He slipped on his coat, grabbed the lantern and pushed out into the storm, boots sinking in the thick mud. The wind nearly knocked him sideways as he headed toward the edge of his land, toward the old oak tree that had stood longer than the town itself. There beneath it, he saw her, a woman collapsed against the roots, her dress soaked and torn, face pale as bone. Her arms were scraped raw, her ankle twisted at a terrible angle. She looked like she had crawled through hell and only barely made it out. "Damn," Elias muttered and knelt beside her. "Miss? Can you hear me?" She flinched at the sound but didn't speak. "All right then," he said softly. "I'm going to get you out of this mess." He scooped her up, surprised by how light she was, and carried her back toward the cabin, shielding her from the worst of the wind. Every few steps, she whimpered against his chest, but she never fully woke. Inside, the fire was still alive, a stubborn flicker in the hearth. Elias laid her on the old cot near the fire and lit a few more lanterns. Her skin was cold to the touch, and mud streaked her cheeks. Her hair, dark and tangled, stuck to her forehead, where blood had begun to dry. He checked her leg. Bad sprain, maybe a fracture, but nothing worse. She was lucky. "Where the hell did you come from?" he muttered, pulling a wool blanket over her. It was nearly dawn by the time he finished tending to her wounds. He washed the blood from her face, wrapped her ankle, and fed the fire till the room warmed. She still hadn't spoken, hadn't stirred, but her breathing had steadied. He sat in the rocker nearby, eyes heavy, waiting. When she finally opened her eyes, it was slow, like it hurt to wake up. "Hey," Elias said gently. "You're safe. You're at my place." She looked around, dazed, then tried to sit up and winced in pain. "Don't move too quick. You're hurt pretty bad." Her eyes met his, sharp, green, full of something she wasn't ready to say. "What's your name?" he asked. "May." She hesitated just a fraction of a second before answering, but Elias caught it. "You got family nearby?" She shook her head. "Well, May," he said, rising to pour her a cup of water, "you crash into the wrong storm or the wrong town?" "Maybe both." She drank the water in slow sips, wincing again as she shifted. Elias noticed a faint tattoo on her wrist, a small bird in flight. Not the sort of thing you saw in women around these parts. "I don't mean to pry," he said after a beat, "but folks don't just wash up under my trees unless they're running from something." May said nothing, just stared at the fire like it might offer her an answer. Elias didn't push. He simply pulled another blanket over her, grabbed his coffee and went back to his chair. Outside, the storm began to die, but inside something new had taken root, something as quiet and dangerous as lightning held in the sky. And Elias Crow, a man who hadn't believed in much since the war, suddenly found himself wondering what kind of wind had carried May Delaney into his life, and what would follow behind her. By the next morning, the storm had passed, but its silence felt heavier than the thunder ever had. Elias stood on the porch with his coffee in one hand, watching the gray clouds drift like ghosts over the plains. Behind him, inside the cabin, May Delaney slept under a wool blanket, her breath slow and even. He didn't trust her, not fully, not yet. But he had seen enough broken things in his time to know when someone was running, not just from danger, but from themselves. When she stirred, Elias stepped inside and leaned against the doorframe. "Sun's up. You hungry?" May blinked at the ceiling for a moment, as if deciding whether to stay in her skin. Then she nodded. "Starving." He fixed eggs and cornbread, poured black coffee into a clean tin cup, and handed it to her with the kind of silent efficiency that came from years of cooking only for one. She ate slow at first, then like someone who hadn't eaten in days. You remember how you got here? He asked, keeping his voice level. Walked, she said, wiping her mouth. In that storm? May looked at him then, her expression unreadable. Would have taken a hurricane if I had to. Elias nodded, letting her have the silence. When she finished, she stood, wobbly but determined, her twisted ankle wrapped tight. I need to get to Dry Creek. You got a horse? He raised an eyebrow. You plan to ride with a busted leg? I'll limp if I have to. What's in Dry Creek? Someone who owes me answers, she said simply. Elias studied her. You don't seem like someone looking for answers. You seem like someone looking for justice. She met his gaze without flinching. Maybe both. He gave a slow nod. Dry Creek's 3 towns over. Ain't much there but gamblers, guns, and trouble. May's jaw tensed. Sounds about right. Elias folded his arms. You're not from around here. Is it that obvious? You got Eastern manners but Western eyes, and you flinch like someone used to hiding a knife. May smiled, the first real one he'd seen on her lips. That's supposed to be a compliment. Just an observation, he replied, one soldier to another. She blinked. You were in the war? Union cavalry, he said, Missouri front. Me too, she said, but not cavalry, not in uniform either. Elias's brow furrowed. Then how? May leaned forward. You ever hear of the Whitlock massacre? He nodded slowly. Burned out ranch, whole family gone. Claimed it was Comanche. Locals never bought it. May's voice dropped. It wasn't Comanche. It was a man named Silas Brandt. Elias's eyes narrowed. That name I know. He ran a unit off the books. Confederacy paid him in gold and silence. Killed for profit. I saw what he did to my sister's family. I was supposed to marry into Whitlock land. I arrived the day after. Elias didn't speak for a moment. I've been tracking him ever since, she added. Last I heard, he's in Dry Creek, pretending to be a respectable rancher. And you're just gonna walk in and what? Ask politely? No, May said, her voice sharp. I'm going to remind him who remembers. Elias studied her a long while. Then he said, You'll need a better boot, a better story, and a man at your side who knows how to keep watch without blinking. She tilted her head. You offering? I'm saying you don't have to do this alone. May hesitated, then nodded once. Good, Elias said, stepping toward the door. We leave at dawn. That night, while May slept once more, Elias took the time to clean and oil his old rifle. He hadn't fired it in nearly a year, but the weight of it in his hands felt right. Familiar, necessary. Out beyond the prairie, the wind whispered like an omen. And inside the cabin, 2 strangers prepared for a ride that neither of them knew would change their lives forever. The morning broke with a golden silence, the kind only found in places too stubborn for change. Elias had already saddled the horses by the time May stepped onto the porch, her frame wrapped in his old duster, her hair braided back tight, eyes sharper than a Bowie knife. You sure you can ride? He asked. I've ridden with worse, she replied, swinging her injured leg over the saddle with a grimace, but no sound of complaint. They rode in silence at first, the rhythm of hooves and creaking leather filling the air between them. The land stretched wide, golden fields folding into dry gulches and weather-beaten rocks. Time moved different out here, slower, but heavier too. Elias finally broke the quiet. You got a plan when we get there? May looked straight ahead. Find Brandt. Put a bullet where his conscience should be. Vengeance don't always hit the mark clean, he said. You sure this ain't just about rage? She gave a cold laugh. When a man slaughters children for coin, rage is the only honest thing left. He let that settle. They rode on. Midday they stopped near a creek. While the horses drank, Elias handed May a strip of dried meat and sat beside her under a sycamore tree. You said you were meant to marry into the Whitlock family, he said. That before or after the war? During, she replied. War ended plenty of things. Love was just one of them. Elias nodded. Ain't much room for softness when blood's still drying. I wasn't looking for softness, May said. Just land, stability, a place that didn't burn. He studied her profile. And now? Now I want peace, she said. But first, I want justice. When they remounted, the sky had begun to turn copper along the edges. Dry Creek would take another day's ride, and Elias knew every inch of the trail. But what worried him wasn't the path. It was the silence growing in May's eyes, like she was hollowing herself out to carry what was coming. That night they made camp near a cluster of cottonwoods. Elias built a fire while May cleaned the old pistol she'd hidden in the lining of her coat. He watched her hands, steady, practiced, lethal. "You ever kill a man?" she asked suddenly, not looking up. Elias didn't flinch. "Yes." "Before or after the uniform?" "Both." May nodded, as if that answer mattered more than the confession. Later, as the fire crackled low and coyotes howled far off, May stared into the flames. "He murdered them slow," she said. "My sister, her husband, their baby. Then burned the house like it was nothing." Elias swallowed hard. "I found the wedding ring in the ashes," May whispered, "still warm." He didn't offer comfort, just sat beside her, the silence shared and sacred. Then softly he said, "We'll find him." May turned to him, her face lit by firelight. "And then?" Elias met her gaze. "Then you decide if killing him will make you feel alive again, or if surviving him already means you won." May stared for a long moment, then nodded once. When the fire died down and the stars claimed the sky, they lay under the same worn blanket, back to back, saying nothing. But both of them knew the real war hadn't ended. It had just changed uniforms. Dry Creek didn't look like much. Just a string of buildings clinging to the dust like barnacles to driftwood. One saloon, one jail, 2 stores, and a church that hadn't rung its bell since the cholera winter. But May recognized it the moment they crested the ridge. Her jaw clenched so tight Elias could hear her teeth grind. "You sure?" he asked. She didn't answer, just nudged her horse forward, eyes locked on the saloon. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and stale whiskey. A piano clinked in the corner, out of tune and barely cared for. Men sat at poker tables with the kind of eyes that had long stopped seeing anything but trouble. Brant wasn't hard to spot. He sat near the window, flanked by 2 men, his hat tilted just enough to scream arrogance. A scar ran down his cheek like a brand, and the colt at his hip gleamed with custom engraving. May didn't hesitate. She stepped through the saloon doors like a storm rolling in. The piano stopped. Heads turned. Elias stepped in behind her, one hand near his belt, the other near his own gun. Brant looked up, blinked once, then grinned. "Well, I'll be damned," he drawled. "May Whitlock, thought you were dead." She didn't smile. "Not yet. You come all this way to haunt me, or are you finally ready to forgive and forget?" May took one step closer. "I came for the truth. Then I came for justice." Brant leaned back, laughing. "Sweetheart, you were never built for blood. Your daddy tried to raise you into some frontier angel, but deep down, you're just soft bark on a dying tree." May pulled the revolver from her coat, slow, smooth, like the moment had been rehearsed 1,000 times in the dark. Brant's smile didn't fade. "You really think that thing's gonna change anything?" Elias spoke then, voice low. "She ain't the only one packing." The 2 men with Brant shifted, hands hovered. Tension cracked the air like lightning before a storm. "Stand down," Brant muttered, never taking his eyes off May. May's voice was steady. "You rode into my sister's land and left them to die screaming. You shot her in the stomach, Brant. She lived for hours. Did you even know that?" Brant's jaw twitched. "I did what I had to do. They were holding out on Whitlock land, and I had orders." "Orders from whom?" "From your future father-in-law," he said with a bitter smile. "You think that deal was ever about love? You were a bargaining chip, sweetheart. Your old man made promises he couldn't keep." May's hand shook, barely. "Then why kill them?" "Because I could," Brant said simply. The words hit her like buckshot, and for a second she saw her whole life burn down to that moment. Ash and silence, and a man who never paid for the things he took. "I should kill you," she whispered. "You should," Brant agreed, "but you won't." May exhaled, slow. The gun never wavered, but she didn't pull the trigger. Instead, Elias stepped forward, tossed a folded piece of parchment onto Brant's table. That there's a confession. One of your boys wrote it down before bleeding out near Red Fork. Names, dates, May's family. All of it. Sheriff's already seen it. Brant's smile vanished. You'll hang, Elias said. Not by her hand, but by the laws. You think law matters out here? We made it matter, Elias replied. A beat passed. Then Brant lunged, but May had already moved. One shot rang out, clean, direct, into his shoulder. He spun and dropped, groaning, gun skittering across the floor. His men reached for theirs, but Elias already had his drawn, eyes blazing. Try me, he said. The men froze. Blood pooled under Brant's arm as he writhed. May stood over him. I didn't kill you, she said, but I'll watch you hang. She turned and walked out, boots loud against the floorboards. Elias followed, but not before tipping his hat to the stunned saloon. Justice came to Dry Creek, he said. Y'all best get used to it. They left Dry Creek with the sun bleeding into the western sky, a streak of fire smeared across clouds like old war paint. May didn't speak for the first 10 miles. Not a word. She rode like a woman who had finally let go of a weight she didn't realize she'd been carrying. And yet Elias could feel it in the silence. There was more. They made camp near a dried-up riverbed. Elias built a fire. May sat across from him, boots off, coat folded into a pillow behind her. She was staring into the flames when she said it. I didn't pull the trigger because I wanted to feel different after. Elias nodded. And did you? No. They let the crackle of the fire speak for a while. I should be satisfied, she added. I got what I came for. Brant'll hang. But, Elias prompted, but I still wake up with their screams in my ears. I still see the blood on the porch. I still feel like I failed them. Elias tossed another log on the fire. Sparks leapt skyward. That's grief, he said. It don't end with justice or revenge. It just changes shape. May looked at him tired. How do you live with that? He stirred the fire with a stick. You plant new things where the pain used to be. You build. You grow. You stay soft, even when the world tells you to go hard. She gave a quiet, broken laugh. That sounds like something a preacher might say. He grinned. Maybe I missed my calling. Later that night, when the wind had calmed and the coyotes sang low in the hills, May asked, Why'd you help me, Elias? He looked at her for a long time before answering. Because I know what it's like to lose everything and have no one left who believes you can still stand. In the morning, a rider approached their camp, dusty, panting, with urgency written all over his face. A teenager, barely 17, wild-eyed. You, Elias? He asked between breaths. Elias stood. Who's asking? The boy held out a telegram. Came through from Jericho. Said it was urgent. Elias took it, read, his brow furrowed. What is it? May asked. He looked up slowly. Marshall in Jericho's been shot. The deputy's asking for help. Says there's a gang holdup near the canyon. Says they're using the Whitlock Ranch as a base. May stiffened. That's my land. Not anymore, Elias said grimly. They've claimed it. She stood, fist clenched. Then we take it back. You sure? He asked. Her voice was stone. I've buried too much there to let outlaws dance on their graves. They rode hard toward Jericho, dust kicking up behind them like a comet tail. Word had traveled faster than they did. By the time they reached the town, men and women had gathered. Farmers, shopkeepers, even a couple of retired rangers. All of them armed, all of them angry. The deputy met them at the edge of town. He was young, clearly overwhelmed, but held himself steady. Elias, he said, glad you came. You got eyes on them? Yeah, the deputy nodded. About 10 men, mean ones, took over the Whitlock barn and the house. One of them was bragging they'd turn it into a gambling hall. May's eyes narrowed. Not if I burn it to the ground first. Elias looked around. The people of Jericho weren't trained fighters, but they were tough, determined survivors. You sure about this? He asked May one last time. She met his gaze, calm and clear. Let's end this. For good. They came at dawn. Mist clung low to the ground as Elias, May, and a ragged column of townsfolk crept through the ravine behind the Whitlock property. No war drums, no speeches, just the whisper of boots over dry earth and the weight of what was to come. May crouched behind a boulder overlooking her old home, the house she once scrubbed clean with her mother, the barn she helped raise after her father broke his back in the storm of '62. Now it was desecrated, boards pried loose, windows shattered, a makeshift banner with a bottle and dice painted on it, fluttering where her mother's lace curtains used to hang. She loaded her rifle without ceremony. "We go on your word?" she told Elias. Elias looked out at the yard where the outlaws moved without care. 3 near the porch, 2 at the water pump, others inside. "We start with smoke," he said. "Drive 'em out, then flank." May nodded once. "No mercy. No mistakes either," he said firmly. The signal came in the form of fire. 2 hay bales doused in kerosene lit at opposite ends of the barn. As the flames erupted, confusion spread. Shouts, doors slamming, boots pounding dirt. Then the air cracked. May's rifle rang out, dropping the first man who stumbled into the yard. Elias followed, calm and lethal. The townsfolk advanced in waves, scared but resolute. The gunfight was short but brutal. One man tried to flee through the back fence and met the deputy's shotgun. Another pulled May down by her coat until she drove her elbow into his throat and finished what the fire hadn't. In less than 15 minutes, it was over. The barn burned slow and hot behind them. May stood over the porch steps, her chest heaving. Blood, some of it hers, spattered across her shirt. Elias approached, holding a tattered ledger he'd pulled from one of the outlaws' saddlebags. "They'd been fencing stolen goods, using your land as a hub." "Not anymore," she said quietly. A silence fell then, thick, not empty. Behind them, the people of Jericho began to scatter, some dragging bodies, others checking wounds. No celebration, just relief. May walked into her house. It smelled like smoke and old ghosts. She moved slowly, touching the edge of a broken table, running her fingers over the cracked frame of a family photo, scorched around the edges but still intact. Her mother's eyes stared back at her, strong, proud. Outside, Elias waited. She emerged an hour later, changed into a clean shirt she'd found in an upstairs drawer. Her face was streaked with soot, her eyes rimmed red, but steady. "It's done," she said. He nodded. "It's yours again." "I don't know what to do with it," she admitted. "You'll figure it out," he said. "And if you want, I'll help." She looked at him, eyes softening. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," he replied. "That's why it matters." Weeks passed. The Whitlock Ranch became something new. Not a home, not yet, but a place where broken things were patched and planted again. May stayed, repaired what could be saved, tore down what couldn't. Elias visited often, helping when he could, sometimes with a hammer, sometimes just with quiet company. They didn't speak much about the past anymore. It was there, sure, like old scars, but it didn't define the space between them. One afternoon, May stood in the field with dirt under her nails and sunlight on her shoulders. The wind carried the scent of growing things, onions, sage, and a touch of lavender. She closed her eyes and breathed it in. Elias stepped beside her. "You did this." "We did," she corrected. He smiled. "You ever think of what's next?" She turned to him. "Yeah," she said, "but for once I'm not rushing toward it." And so it ended not with a shootout or a grave, but with something quieter. A woman and a man, a field and a second chance. The wind still carried the ghosts of Dry Creek, but now they had company, hope stitched into every new furrow, every shared silence, every hand that chose to build instead of burn. And so, across these unforgiving lands, another tale drifts away with the wind. If this quiet courage, this stubborn heart touched you in any way, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and pass this story on to someone who needs it. Don't forget to subscribe, because out here there are still so many truths left to tell, each one carved from pain, hope, and dust. This is Wild West Stories. Thank you for watching.